This is Twit.
Obviously, the big deal, well, the big deal to what one would think is the overall narrative is the keyboard. We have a different mechanism than we have been used to in models past. So tell us a little bit about this. Is this a cherry switch key smush situation? What are we working with here?
Yeah, are we going to hear
Yeah.
when we're tapping?
Is it Apple Extended 2? Did they bring back the Apple Extended 2 is what you're asking. So what they did was they went back to scissor switches, which is what they had in the 2015 and previous MacBook Pros, but they used the Magic Keyboard, which is what you get with an iMac, for example, as the inspiration because a lot of people really love that keyboard and they were just sort of scratching their heads as to why Apple never put it in a laptop. So they started with that, but they had to change it a little bit because the Magic Keyboard is angled, it's not flat, and this has to go on a laptop. So they're using the scissor switches, but they made a new rubber dome that sort of locks the key out at the top to give it more stability. So it feels like a scissor switch keyboard, but it's not all loosey-goosey like the older MacBook Pros were. So I like it. It's almost like a hybrid feeling between the butterflies. It has the stability of the butterflies, but hopefully the mechanical durability and reliability of the scissor switches.
Beautiful. So you have used it. You've played with it.
Yes.
You've typed on it. And
yes.
See, you and I are in the same sort of mindset where I can right now I've got a Surface Laptop 3 that I'm typing on, and it's fine. And then I'll switch to an iPad, and it's fine, the iPad keyboard. And so I don't really notice too much of a difference between keyboards, but some people do. And have you done any dust tests? Have you tried eating one of those horrible granola bars above it and seeing how things go after that? I guess what I'm asking really is, did Apple talk about not just the redesign of the keys, but more importantly, the what they've done to make sure that we don't have a space bar that doesn't press down after a while, or a K key that won't type anymore?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several things, and the problems with the old keyboard were multifaceted, and I think that's part of what led to a lot of the people saying I have it, I don't have it, I have different issues. These have the scissor switches. They've got an extra millimeter of travel. So previously things were not supposed to get into the butterflies, but it turned out they did, and then they couldn't get out again. So because these have an extra millimeter in them and they're scissor switches, anything that goes in, like the older 2015 and earlier MacBook Pros, it should come out again. And also because it's using rubber for the domes and not metal, the previous metal would sort of fatigue, and then it wouldn't register, or it would double register. The newer material is better for that with the butterflies, but these are rubber, so they should be whole realms better again in terms of durability.
Now, I found this to be the most wild aspect of the MacBook Pro, the new MacBook Pro, is the focus on audio, both speaker-wise and microphone-wise. So you put together, as you do for Vector, a video review or first look or whatever you want to call it of the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And it's my understanding that you recorded most of the audio in that video using the built-in microphones on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Tell me everything there is to know. How were you able to do that and still put out a video that sounded good? What is going on in there?
So there's two things. One is the new speaker system, and I'll just touch on that briefly because it's a shorter story. Apple built this huge lab when they were making the HomePod and the AirPods. It's outside of Apple Park, and it's like a -2 decibel room and a 0 floor. It's just one of those giant sound labs. And Apple engineering has been working there for years on all sorts of stuff. And they brought in the MacBook Pro, and they've created two woofers, one on top of the other, that provide deeper bass but cancel out the vibrations. So if your MacBook is rocking, you can still keep typing. And they also have a 3-speaker array that uses Apple has its own technology, but also uses Dolby Atmos if it's available to 3D positionally place audio around you. And because they know where your head is likely to be relative to a laptop, they can really 3D play sound. So it sounds like almost as good as a HomePod. We were playing Star Wars stuff on it earlier, and it's hard to believe this sound comes from a laptop. Wow. I don't know how often you'd use it as your main stereo system, but if you ever need to, it works really well. And the mics are the same thing. Apple doesn't mean you to replace, like we have these fancy XLR mics. They don't mean you to replace that or your good USB podcasting setup. But But if you're on the road, if you're out and you just need to record something, they want you to be able to make it sound as good as possible. So they've put what they call USB quality, like it should be similar to what you get with a Blue Yeti or something, right into the MacBook. And they went for really high signal to noise ratio. So you don't get the sort of clipping and you don't get active noise canceling, which some other sort of lower end USB microphones try to do. It sounds really good. And I recorded everything after the intro and before the outro completely on that microphone system.
Wow. Yeah. So one of the things that's a little bit out of place on this Pro laptop is the 720p iSight camera. Now, obviously there's a difference between what Apple says, what Apple does, what that side of things, and then also sort of the reading between the lines and trying to figure out strategy. And you, as an Apple analyst, I'm asking you for that second one. What do you think is the thinking there? Why are we not seeing an updated webcam mechanism? I don't, maybe Apple did comment on that, and I'd love to hear that, but I'm more interested sort of you from the analyst perspective of, is there a reason why we still have a 720p camera in a laptop that has a fantastic microphone and speaker system?
Yeah, I think it simply is, they go through their list and they get to a certain amount of things they can get done in any given time. And that just didn't make it onto the list, which me personally is a crime against the machine because it's so good. And what I mentioned in my feedback was, that they should take the same rationale they're using for that microphone system and apply it to the camera. And I understand that they have these really, really thin lids and that there's not a lot of Z-index for good glass in there. But I would even take a minor bump at this point, but give me a camera 4K if you can, that is good enough that if I ever have to just sit down and do a Talking Heads video, or I'm traveling and I really want to do MacBreak Weekly, I can call in and I will not completely embarrass myself in front of Alex Lindsay by using the camera that they put into this $3,000 machine.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm like thinking through my head, like, okay, so are the Venn diagram of like creators that would get this, that would totally agree with you, and then there's all the other people that would get it that'd be like, I don't care, I just want to make like a Skype call to my mom, or whatever.
But they'll say just use your iPhone, but then I'll say that for the mics too.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to put
totally.
mics in the thing, put the camera in the thing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to hear your take on the battery, because this thing, like, battery can be kind of a boring thing, but I mean, laptop life
important.
lives and dies by the battery life. And this sounds like it has a pretty like big, bulky battery. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this battery goes to 100, and that is the legal limit for the FAA. That is as much as you can fly with. And other companies have gone to like 98, 99, and Apple, they ran up to the line and stopped exactly at the line. And that does make it a little bit heavier. It's 0.3 pounds heavier than the previous generation 15-inch MacBook Pro, but it gives you an extra hour of battery life. And that means like Wi-Fi browsing. If you're using Final Cut, that will be relatively less, but it gives you an extra hour. And at the end of the day, I think it's a really good trade-off, because Apple has a thin and light machine, and lightness is absolutely a user benefit. If it's hard to carry, if it's hard to use, if it's hard to hold up, people don't like it. But you have a MacBook Air for that. If you're going to make a 16-inch MacBook Pro, let it be a 16-inch MacBook Pro.
Yeah, you really forgive a MacBook Pro because it is a pro machine. It is capable of all these things. I have one at home. It's obviously a much earlier model, but I forgive it for its weight because it's so capable. It's just kind of, that's part of that particular brand, that lineup.